Nap time, so we're going to have Mahoney come up here and talk to us. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor and privilege not only to introduce the Deputy Commandant for Programs and Resources, but a very close friend of mine. I was sitting there looking at the age of the table of experience, and it's dawned on me that, you know, General Tulin was Marford Pack, and Mo was his deputy, or was it the other way? Was it you were Marford Pack and John was his deputy? John Tulin was U.S. Forces Japan deputy, then me, then Mo. So together we've crossed similar paths, and what a great experience that was. But truly, if you look at Mo's bio, you'll see that he is he's a great pilot, as pilots go, I guess. But more importantly, you know, he attended the University of Australia and got a great degree out of that. But Mo, thank you for taking time today and sharing what you're about to share with us. I think it's going to be very insightful. Thanks.
All right, I understand we're live streaming this thing, so I'll try and stay on the script. But before I do that, let me go off the script. Coming up here outside, everybody that I talk to are interested in a bunch of things as far as resourcing and money go. So let me just put a chapeau on, and this isn't directly related to force design at all. I'll go 22, 23, 24, 25. Just the highlights. It won't be, hey, here's X amount of resources toward this or the other thing. Highlights that happened in the P&R world. In 22, we took our entire general ledger, our entire bank account, we picked it up and we moved it from a 30-year-old general ledger system to a new automated general ledger system called the Defense Agency's Initiatives. And as we all know, computers are here to help, and it was seamless. So I'm still limping around the E-ring as we transition, but it is a good thing going forward. We now have deep down clarity at the transaction level. I paid $10 for a notebook, and I can follow that dollar all the way from the appropriation line all the way down to who got the notebook. And that will lead into my second point in 22, which is a full financial audit. Without that type of information, we will not be auditable. So the system that we were in, everybody was comfortable with it. We could not be auditable. We could not tell that story to the department, to Congress, to basically anybody who asked, hey, we gave you $1, follow that buck all the way through its life cycle. We couldn't do it to an auditable standard. We're in the middle of that now. So as we wrestle with the transition of our general ledger system and a full financial audit, we're pretty bloody busy going into 23. I'll talk about 23 and 24 only in general terms because we don't have a budget for 23. And we certainly don't have one yet for 24, though we have shipped the program to the department. And I'll answer it this way. This time last year, if you'd asked me how you doing, I'd probably have a sad face on. We had certain hits that we took to the top line and specifically against certain programs by zip code that we were trying to defend, that we were trying to appeal, that we were trying to reclama and get those resources back. Now, we'll see what happens in the budget, but as I stand here right now, going into the next formulation post-program review for 24, I feel a lot better. Okay, whether it's wholeness of the program, cost, schedule, performance of each of our ACAT items or other items, I feel better. Now, I'll feel much better when I see an enacted budget. I'll feel much better when I see what Congress has in store for us for top line for 24. So I feel better from a financial and programmatic position where I'm standing right now. 25, we are CD&I is in the generation of requirements and a plan. Concomitant with that, I have my programmers going in to look at where we are financially against the plans that are at play. And I will just tell you that the relationship between P&R and CD&I is really, really good. And I'm not a smoke blower, cheerleader type of guy, but General Heckel's team down there has been nothing but forthright, cooperative, and I hope my team has been the same, because without that relationship, you force people into positions of getting out of their line. Programmers trying to put a plan together anywhere you want to be. Trust me, because we'll just make the math work. It won't necessarily make the requirement work. So I feel very, very good about how we enter into the planning and then programming phase of 25. But there's uncertainty volume around 23 and on because we don't have statutes. We don't have a bill for the budget, but we'll see what happens when we do. And I'm confident that we'll get one. Okay. Yeah, fighter pilot jokes. Okay. All right. So Chuck asked me a couple of weeks back to come up, and he said, hey, I need your help, and I thought it was maybe to get one of those 50 cars you have down off the blocks. You know, knowing full well that I drive a 2001 Tacoma. But isn't that just a way of a Motor T guy asking a fighter pilot for help? You've all seen Top Gun, right? So you know there's nothing that we can't do. Isn't that right, General Biden? All right. This is truly a great showing, and it's good, number one, to be out of the Pentagon, but number two, to see friendly faces. And I'd be a little bit remiss if I didn't thank the sponsors and the people from industry who are here, who are at once friends, supporters, and well and truly in my world, partners in getting the programs to where they need to be. So guys, thanks, guys and ladies, thanks for coming. So where's Steve White? I saw Steve White. Steve, you teleworking? Is that what you're doing? Yeah, okay. Let's talk a little bit about a program aspect as it relates to force design. So I'll start maybe a little bit out of the program land and hopefully touch on it and maybe drift a little bit. If you have a fully informed, and fully informed to me means a mature understanding of the rapidly evolving security environment, the threat. If you know the types of threats that are evolving, and once again, the pace at which they are changing, you know that the status quo programmatically is not going to work when it comes time to compete. When it comes time to fight. It will not work. We'll defeat ourselves in detail if we do not evolve and change. This point, we didn't make it up. It's been directed to us in the strategic documents. The National Security Strategy was mentioned, the National Defense Strategy, which dictates that we adapt, change, and move. It's even more evident and more specific in the Commandant's Force Design 2030 document and the subsequent updates to that, with specific tasks. A little bit different than in times past, at least in my 35 years. So, you know, tanks and towed artillery, they had their time. They had their time when they were decisive. But they are not, for the Marine Corps, going to be decisive in any reasonable appreciation and mature appreciation of a future conflict. I don't think that's a bold statement. So I'd like to talk a little bit. You ever seen that show, Mythbusters? The dude with the funny hat, and they say, hey, you know, you can shoot a guy off a hangsman's rope with one round, and they bust the myths. I want to talk about a few myths here, and then just place facts against it. Whether I bust those myths or not, you can judge for yourself. You know, myths, you know, they tend to be veiled sometimes in a little bit of fact, but mostly in a lot of emotion and anecdote and trying to see the world the way you either saw it or want to see it. So let's talk about the first myth. Some believe that Force Design 2030 was developed by a select few individuals without input from the rest of the Marine Corps, that doesn't have support beyond service leadership. Here's the fact. The first iteration of Force Design 2030 occurred under CMC 38, General Neller, and I believe it was in July of 2019 when he formed an OPT from folks across the MAGTF that included 3 active duty general officers and a retired ACMAC as a graybeard. I don't think that really qualifies as a small, cloistered, exclusive group. The fact is that Force Design 2030 has been an iterative process, a process that's been run through many cycles, watch, rinse, repeat, see how it looks, that was rooted in Commandant 31's Hunter Warrior, if people remember that, as I look at some of the mature folks in the audience. When we talk about reconnaissance and counter-reconnaissance, that's a euphemism for what was envisioned by the 33rd Commandant when he brought out distributed operations. See, sense, and decide before the other guy can. Unlike MCDP-1, which no kidding history tells us, was written by almost a singular captain under the direction of General Gray, force design is and has been the product of a robust feedback loop. Programmatically, I can tell you that is how we are doing it. When we envision a program that is supportive of force design, we look at it from a financial position, we look at it across a 5-year plan, and we look at it for supportability against the resources that we think we will get. I keep looking at Steve White, who's my head programmer, and you can talk to him after and see if I'm lying. We conducted over 30 war games, 25 studies, 40 separate integrated planning teams, and numerous experiments, totaling well over 100 different events to inform, shape, and validate the components of force design. And every program review goes through a watch cycle in the department, it goes through a watch cycle in the Marine Corps, then the Dawn, then OST, then across the river multiple times, either through Congress or OMB or all of that. So it is not stealing away in the night at all. Beyond the formal development process, though, there have been extensive scholarly debates about force design. You saw some of the media that has been the centerpiece of those debates. The Marine Corps Gazette, online, War on the Rocks, which have led to further improvement. Just didn't land on the print pages of the Gazette and went unanswered. I can tell you from a program standpoint, that is true. Another fact, force design has the support of multiple combatant commanders. You might expect, yeah, the U.S. Indo-PACOM commander, he loves it because it's exclusively focused on PACOM, but here's a fact. General Walters, who just gave up EUCOM and Supreme Allied Commander Europe, stated that, and this is a quote, "The modernized Marine Corps dramatically enhances our options, a brown water force that can shoot, move, and communicate, and is very expeditionary, is priceless for 21st century security." That's EUCOM. So the myth that force design is somehow geographically exclusive doesn't seem to pass the Walters test as the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe. In my world, what is more important than Admiral Aquilino, maybe, don't tell him that, he'll beat me up, or General Walters, is Congress. That is where we get our oversight. That is where the checks are written. That is where expectation is for us to perform against the things that we said we would do. The members of Congress have shown support. They've written open articles about force design and the vector we're on, and importantly during hearings, and most importantly to me, with funding. When we roll out some of the programs that are integral to moving forward with force design, that has almost been, it's been remarkable, I'll just say, the support rhetorically and on the floor that we've received from Congress. Here's another fact, and it's an important one for me. You know that the Commandant said, in force design, we're going to pay our own freight to the extent that we can. We're going to divest of things that we don't need. We're going to buy less of the things that we need less, and we're going to economize in the programs that we need in order to pay our own freight. In that effort, over 5 POM cycles, we have reaped $18.2 billion. Of that $18.2 billion, we've been able to push 15.8 of that directly back into investment. Okay, that leaves a delta of $2.4 billion. Again, I don't want to get too programmatically geek here, but those were bills levied upon us at successive levels that we would have had to pay anyway. So from a P&R standpoint of pulling out that money and being able to put it back into the things you need, is pretty good plays over 5 POM cycles. So the myth of losing funding, and I'm the one that says, hey man, money in motion is money at risk. I believe that to be true. We overcame that level of risk for the most part with those numbers I just quoted. But in addition to losing funding, some myths have assumed that we would lose any structure that we divested in pursuit of a modernized force. That assumption is also proved wrong. The fact is we divested 3 tank battalions, 3 infantry battalions, 16 cannon batteries. Not the first time, by the way, that we have divested infantry battalions. Happened twice that I know in recent history under Commandant 29 and Commandant 35. We were able to retain 100% of the funds that supported that structure, 100% of it. So while the structure changed and moved and pushed around, the resources that supported it went with it. So what did we do? Reinvest in other critical areas. 3 long-range fire batteries, 14 additional rocket batteries, additional air defense battalion, a VMGR squadron, tanker squadron, and 3 additional unmanned aerial vehicle squadrons. All of this to modernize the combat arms team. Similar to the myth about losing structure resources, is believed that the force design is degrading the ground combat element, throwing out facts, quote unquote, that we are decreasing the infantry by 41%. So I'm just doing some quick math. That myth, it doesn't stand up to math. As part of Force Design 2030, the Marine Corps did reduce the number of infantry battalions, as I just mentioned. And we took out of the straight structure of a battalion about 60 or 70 Marines. But when you do the math, it doesn't approach 41%. It's maybe 15 or 20%. But when you compare that reduction in structure with the operational vector that we're on, I don't believe that it's 1 for 1. If you have superior sensing, if you have superior lethality, if you have the superior ability to communicate across very differentiated and resilient circuits, that makes that individual much more valuable. So I don't believe that it's 1 for 1. Some have said that the Marine Corps is taking too much risk by reducing the number of M777s, our lightweight howitzers. The fact is that we're modernizing our ability to conduct combined arms by increasing the number of rocket artillery batteries and the number of rocket launchers. This, to me, given a mature appreciation of the threat, increases our standoff, increases our ability to queer the engineering solution of the enemy and to maneuver against the enemy. Some myths state that Force Design 2030 is crippling the aviation combat element. I am late of the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing, and I looked very jealously at the current incumbent CG there, and I can tell you, from a programmatic standpoint, this is not true. We continue to invest significant amounts of the aviation portfolio in manned platforms like the F-35 and the CH-53K. We have not changed the POR by a single tail. Shaky, is that right? We have bought out the POR in UH-1 Yankee and AH-1Z. Bought it out. We bought out the POR in MV-22. We're going to buy out the POR in KC-130J. So programmatically, I don't see how that weakens the ACE. Importantly, we're invested in other elements of the ACE, investing heavily in the Gator radar, which has turned out to be a game changer, both open source and other levels of classification. CAC-2S, the Common Aviation Command and Control System, which is turning out to be the secret sauce of marrying a superior sensor with the rest of the Joint Force. We have associated classified technologies, which once again allow us to punch above our weight. And we're investing in unmanned platforms like the MQ-9 and critically in its payloads, which is the important thing about it. We're increasing the lethality of our aircraft by investing in long-range anti-ship missiles, which will aid greatly in deterrence and wartime capability against an enemy who also has long sticks to shoot. Additionally, the Marine Corps is diversifying its unmanned aviation portfolio by investing in a family of unmanned platforms destined for the hands of infantry Marines. Once again, from the perspective of a former wing CG, we are doing things in the wing that I only dreamed about when I was following in the footsteps of General Beidler. So this, to me, from a programmer's standpoint, is firm ground to be on. It's a good vector to be on. And it is a vector, quite frankly, that will give us an advantage. So what I would ask you to do, place yourself on the next battlefield. Appreciate the threat the way you appreciate it, whether you get your news from open source or dive deep into the trades or otherwise, and envision what that future battle space looks like. Envision an enemy that right now has the capability to surveil to very close fidelity this building and the people in it. Imagine an enemy who can potentially monitor the cell phone call that you make to make sure that your teenage daughter got home all right, right now, as we sit here. Envision an enemy with long-range precision fires that can hold you at risk at extreme ranges with extreme precision, who has command and control circuitry in all domains. So if one gets taken out, there are others that can be used. Visualize a weaponized space and a weaponized cyber. Put that all together. So I'm just going to ask a few questions, and then I'll get off the stage here, Chuck. Would you rather rely on M777s out to a range of 30 kilometers, or would you rather develop a remotely driven, remotely launched system capable of firing a Tomahawk land attack missile at over 800 nautical miles? Just asking. In your vision, as you look at this, would you rather continue to employ a single short-range unmanned aircraft system like the RQ-21, or employ a family of systems that are integrated across and at each strata of the MAGTF to develop and provide multi-sensor aerial, maritime, and terrestrial early warning that not only you can use, but you can export that sensing to other decision makers in the fleet and across the joint force? Would you rather limit our infantry units' ability to strike targets within the max range of an 81mm mortar, or provide them with loitering precision strike munitions such as OPF, the Organic Precision Fires program, that when combined with the payloads on a Group 2 UAS can strike targets that only I used to be able to strike in my F-18? I think the either-or comparison here, I think you get my point. Lastly, as far as data and information go, I talked to you about our transition of general ledger system, which really was the commutation of data to a more automated environment. Would you rather have several of your highly competent staff NCOs spend hours deciphering and processing manually a vast amount of sensor data so they can get to the point of providing you with the information for decision, or transporting that information to the fleet or the joint force to a level that is decision worthy? Or would you rather use a machine to do it at the speed of electrons and be able to transport it across the circuitry that I talked about? So transporting, assessing, analyzing, transporting, and having decision makers being able to digest at machine speeds. Which would you rather have, the manual speed or the machine speed? These choices are where force design is taking us. These choices are where the program modernization is aimed. And like I said, I think right now, those choices are good, and we're on a path to make good on that good decision. Whether it's a battle space similar to that of Ukraine or a future maritime fight in the Indo-Pacific, the Marine Corps is investing in these capabilities to provide a necessary advantage to win.
capabilities that I'm pretty sure we can all agree we want to have. Strength of the Marine Corps, though, isn't in our technology. It's not in the boxes that go in our airplanes. The strength is in our individual Marines. That's what makes us different. And if I'm intoning different meaning better, you can take it that way. The men and women from all different backgrounds who put the Eagle Globe and Anchor on and take a little bit of anger and aggression with them are the thing that we will rise or fall on. Force design modernization will give these Marines the capabilities required to deter, when necessary, engage and defeat our adversaries. The equipment that I mentioned earlier, combined, attached to a Marine or in the EGA, will make an interesting situation for our enemies. If they are stupid enough to underestimate our resolve, and certainly the resolve of the Marine Corps, they will be met with a serious situation indeed. Through war games, exercises, and operations, all inclusive across the MAGTF, as they always have, Marines will develop innovative ways to employ the equipment, leading to further advancement. But we got to get the equipment in the hands of the Marines. This requires change. Back to where I started, change is not easy, even when every signpost says change. Even when all the I and W out there says, hey man, you got to change. The expectation in the Marine Corps is that change is duly challenged. We don't change and throw an idea out there and not have it challenged. It's debated and refined, and then debated again until the better or best solution rises to the top. But a perfect decision too late is a bad decision. We cannot become paralyzed out of fear of making the wrong decision, or even worse, paralyzed by the fear based on a myth. In our Corps, once a leader makes a decision, at least in my experience, whether it's a fire team leader to the tactical edge or a MAR-4 commander, Marines implement and execute with violence and aggression. Put aside our personal opinions and disagreements and focus on executing commander's intent. In the Marine Corps I grew up in for the last 35 years, internal disagreements stay internal. They stay with our professional organizations so that we can have a robust and meaningful debate. That's just what Marines do. It's one of the things that makes us different. It's one of the things that makes us exceptional and makes us more agile than other services. Our nation needs a modernized Marine Corps, capable of deterring our adversaries, responding to all manner of crises, and when the time comes, putting a high-speed 500-pound projectile through someone's chest who desperately needs that to happen to them. Again, I really appreciate the opportunity to come in here and talk a little bit about force design and just a programmatic slant to it. Once again, it's great to see the gathering and the friends and supporters that we have out here for this great program, and sir, just so I can prove it, I am a member, all right? So do we have time?
We do.
I could take a couple of questions, just a couple. I'll try not to use profanity.
So this is kind of going off script a little bit. I've asked the general if he would entertain some questions specifically.
Ray Coy is still awake, so I think we're all right.
Sir. Sir, Mark out, so you talked a lot about technology and investment going into it. Wondering how the Marine Corps has realigned their science and technology investment, specifically 6.2, 6.3 money, possibly 6.4, and how are brothers in the Navy responding to that reallocation, and are we being able to reallocate Navy money into naval S&T to support the Marine Corps?
S&T is the lead-in drug to a lot of things that we're doing in the BLIs that you talked about. We never invest enough in S&T, but I will tell you that we are, through Project Convergence, through ABMS, through other cooperative programs, and I'm trying to go through them here by name, we are leveraging, for instance, in Project Convergence, a lot of Army things that are going on, and either riding in their wake or leading where they ride in our wake, pushing us with gullibility. So
So I would say there hasn't been a fundamental realignment, but there has been an appreciation that without that lead-in drug, we don't get to the next stage of development of those exquisite technologies that will give us a decisive advantage. Does that answer your question? Please.
Sir, Tom Keating, maybe to dovetail on Mark.
Sure.
Great clarity on some of the things that are fact and not fact. Great assessment and your dissertation on what we need to fight that future operating environment. And you said put yourself in that position. I have as a logistician, and Commandant said at the last meeting we had time. We have invested funding that is now being reinvested in capability. I struggle to think of how we're going to do logistics. I don't recall you saying the word logistics. Maybe I missed it.
No, you didn't miss it in the interest of time. I skipped over a few things, but your point is well taken. I believe the Commandant said the single most important factor in realizing force design in the expanses of, say, the Pacific is the ability to maneuver, move, and support. Need, that says logistics. So if you look at our organic mobility, from an ancillary connector to the law to L-class ships, that's moving and maneuvering. If you look at delivery systems, whether unmanned, automated, or manned, KC-130, MD-22, 53K, that's getting the stuff there, and then putting a system together, nodal, automated, informed, so we know where the stuff is, how to get it there by multiple different platforms, will get us closer to that goal. And that's where we're moving. Whether it's NPF Next, whether it's those platforms that I talked about, but you can't wish away 3,000 miles of ocean. You can't wish away an enemy who may not want you to build up your sustainment stuff. So we have to get through that, or will it be a one-shot deal? Does that answer your question? I wish I could come here and say, hey, there are these three things that we've accomplished that now have made 3,000 miles into 3 meters, but we're working through it. I got one more, I think, if anybody's got something. Sir?
Sir, Chris Woodbridge, editor of the Marine Corps Gazette. I thank you for the clarification on the divest, invest, return on investment. Can you explain to the audience a little bit why that approach overall was a need or a necessity for the Marine Corps as we look at since the end of the Budget Control Act of 2011, overall defense top line going incrementally up. How is it still important for the Marine Corps to take that divest invest approach?
From the programmer's seat, we never, it is not our tradition to come to the table with a king for a day solution. When we are directed through the strategic documents to look inside our capabilities, to look inside our programs and figure out if there's something that we don't need or something that we need less of. We, in the Marine Corps, we take that seriously. And so we want to take that, but we ask, hey, if we do this, we'd like to keep the resources. Some risk there, like I said. But that tactic has worked out as well. And I think everybody knows in here the last few cycles, we've also gotten some pretty good support on unfunded lists that has been pushing the top line up a little bit. But in the shortest explanation, what I would say is we have a tradition of asking for only what we need. And then we look inside ourselves and say, man, we don't need that anymore. But what we'd like to do, get rid of that and get this that we need. Yeah, Chris, that is. Okay.
Well, let me just expand on that a little bit. I think perhaps where Chris might be going with this is, you know, talk about the Commandant's tenure and the programs that he can affect truly to make change. I think that's kind of, you know.
Well, in general time.
It's a time problem.
Sure. I mean, he'll get one more budget. So the moves to make will be reflected in this budget. The financing strategy, which has been underpinned in testimony and other documents, is that we will pay our own freight to the extent that we can. I'll tell you that come 2025, there's not going to be much more option to pull a significant amount of program and move it to something else. We've already done that. So we need to really think about how we're going to take those programs for change and move them forward beyond to 25, 29 into the 30s. Does that answer your question? All right, I think I'm getting the hook. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was, as promised, I think General Mahoney delivered on, and I was checking my watch, Mo, every time he turned to make sure we were doing okay. It was good. I didn't wear mine today, so we're doing okay. Ladies and gentlemen, again, I thank you all for the participation. I hope that you found this discussion insightful and enriching into the conversation of force design. I want to thank again the team that pulled this together. Leanne, where are you? And Sarah, I know you're here all the time. Thank you again for pulling the event together. And just wish all of you happy holidays as we get into the Thanksgiving season here, and hope to see you soon. Take care.